Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Open Your Eyes to the Universe. If you're joining us for the first time, Open Your Eyes to the Universe is a series of contemporary talks, conversations, open-eyed meditations, and interviews with people who inspire and uplift others just by sharing their wisdom, their insights, and experiences, and in doing so, co-create a better world. I'm Gabrielle Martin, your host for this evening. And as we begin our episode tonight, the Youniverse team acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, to the sea, and to community. And we pay our deep respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who've joined us tonight. And I'd also like to acknowledge the respect, the wise elder within all of us and the collective wisdom of all those here this evening. Last month, we took a deep dive into the significance of 2026, the year of the fire horse in terms of Chinese astrology. We were with Feng Shui master and daily meditation practitioner Gail Atherton. And she was unpacking the spiritual context contained in the fire horse year. She was touching on personal development, security, and safety. She looked at relationships and connections, finances to global realities, highlighting the essential things to make the fire horse energy work for you and bring a successful 2026. If you missed the episode, you can catch it in the YouTube link in the chat box. But here tonight, we're in conversation with Lotta Ardman from Stockholm in Sweden and Linda Lee from Brighton on the south coast of the United Kingdom. Geographically apart, but Linda and Lotta have much in common. They've been on a spiritual journey as daily meditators and also teachers with the Brahma Kumaris for over 40 years. And as you can imagine, they've learnt a lot from the spiritual road. So tonight, they'll be sharing their honest reflections about their spiritual journey. You know, the kind of things that they've learnt on the way about overcoming challenges, of finding purpose, and discovering what truly matters spiritually. They'll be offering relatable insights and perhaps gentle prompts too to consider for your own inner journey as they focus on the moments that shaped them. They'll explore how challenges and setbacks and inner blocks became turning points for growth and how their understanding of what truly matters spiritually has evolved over time. They'll look at what things that they perhaps once believed were important and then maybe today think that it's lesser important, and vice versa. Things that perhaps they thought weren't so relevant, but now understand they hold much deeper meaning now. So both have been on and remain on a remarkable spiritual journey, and they bring a depth of experience about their spiritual journey and its relevance to everyday living. So as Lotta and Linda are both based in the Northern Hemisphere, they're enjoying spring weather. Here down under, it's moving into winter from a splendid autumn in the Blue Mountains. And I guess for them, it's probably about their morning tea time, whereas here we're approaching time for dinner. But a warm welcome to Lotta and Linda to the Southern Hemisphere, affectionately known as Down Under. It's actually a real joy to have you both with us virtually. Hello, Lotta.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And Linda.
Yeah, greetings from the UK.
Oh, wonderful. Good. We're going to have a lovely conversation this evening, and I'm going to ask Lotta if she'll kick off with us. Let me just introduce Lotta to you. As I mentioned, Lotta's based in Stockholm, and it's here that she coordinates the Brahma Kumari centers across Sweden. So Lotta began her spiritual journey with the Brahma Kumaris in about 1982. And at that time, she was in her early 20s. An integral part of this is her commitment to contributing to spiritually based activities in the community and the world that foster upliftment. She presently serves as the secretary of the Spirit of Humanity Forum, a non-profit organisation based in Iceland. It's a fantastic initiative. Through international forums, the organisation has helped catalyse a global movement of leaders and change makers, exploring inner wisdom in leadership and governance. I also know Lotta as, in terms of her artistic background in illustration and painting. And she describes herself at heart as an inquisitive dreamer. And I remember noticing recently when we were in Mount Abu together, we were sitting at a table waiting for people to come, and we were going to be checking them in. It was a reception kind of task that we were doing, and there were ants walking up the table, and she was observing these ants as they crawled along the table where we were sitting. And after about 2 to 3 minutes, she declared, "Look how they're communicating with each other." And I looked, and I would really never have noticed it, but I think this is the kind of like the dreamer and Lotta coming out. And indeed, the ants were very clearly communicating with each other. So it's this type of inquisitive dreaming, I'm sure that, she brings to her spiritual road and her spiritual journey, and she'll share some of these insights with us as she talks about her spiritual road. So, Lotta, to begin, could you briefly share what first what first attracted you to to Raj Yoga meditation and in particular the Brahma Kumaris?
Thank you, Gabrielle, for this eloquent introduction. When I came to the BKs, I was 22 years old, and I had a sense that the world was really in a turmoil. And so, my background, because I was reflecting, preparing for this program, what was my situation at that time? And I remember I didn't have any purpose. I didn't have any direction. I was in an art school, and many of my colleagues or my my friends at school, they had such clear plans what they wanted to do with their study, and I couldn't understand how they could think like that. And so I was attracted to spirituality, I think, very early on. Actually, when you are a child, you can have deeper thoughts than you think. I mean, that we imagine children have. And so I think even when I was 7 years old in school, they used to teach Christianity in Swedish school. It was in the beginning of the 60s. And I loved those stories. And I remember me thinking when I was 7 years old, I haven't done so much bad yet. I still have a chance to become like Christ. And so, that inclination of wanting to be better, to know that there is something higher. And then along my path, this thought have carried on. And I had a belief in God, even though my family wasn't like that, no religiousness in my family. But there was this being drawn to these feelings and these thoughts. And I remember seeing a film, maybe I was 12 or something, about a nun. And I thought, if there's something I could be, that is something I could do. So I think, deeper in the mind, our consciousness can be a programming that is not related to the upbringing or the culture we're born in. And so, yeah. So I think the inclination to spirituality on one hand, and then also the disorientation because of the world I was watching through the news. In those days, there was a film called The Skyscraper is Burning. And I remember taking that I saw that as the whole world is burning. And this was creating a feeling of, I didn't feel a purpose. And I think when I came across the Brahma Kumaris, it wasn't Brahma Kumaris as such, as an organization, because I didn't want to be involved in an organization. I actually came to a meditation first time, planning to be last minute so I could sit by the door, have my experience, and then sneak out because I didn't want to get trapped anywhere. And so to explain what was the attraction, maybe that is a little bit of a picture.
I love what you're saying, and this idea, it was not an idea, but a very deep understanding that at 7 years of age you could know so well, um, where you were and have aspirations by the time you're 12 to be Christ-like, or the sense of wanting to better yourself in some way. So just looking at that and putting that, and I also love this comment around you didn't want to join an organization and sitting by the, at the back there so you could slip out after you'd had your experience. Did you have an experience?
I did. Actually, I planned to go to this. It was a world peace meditation, and it was a bit funny because I used to be always late for everything. Excuse me, just a moment. I have to cough. So my aim was, as I told you, to come this late so I didn't have to get trapped anywhere. But when I arrived, I expected hundreds of people, but there was only 8 people on the street. And they didn't have the key to the room where we were going to sit. And somebody turned around and looked at me and said, "Where do you live?" And I said, "Well, it's just a few blocks away." And then he said, "Can we go to your home?" And my pattern, my habit was to never say no. So I said, "Okay, yes." So we all went home to where I lived and we sat on the floor and we had this meditation. And I didn't know how to meditate. I was usually quite a restless person. And so, but I was very keen because I knew it was happening in 700 places all over the world simultaneously. And so I had a very strong belief that this must have a very powerful effect. And so I was very, I have to be in this, we have to do this properly. And I didn't experience anything except that time went very quickly. And then when everyone had left and I was alone with myself, I experienced that as if buckets of love was just pouring over me. And I had a thought, this is what the Christians are experiencing when they talk about God's love. And so I put on reggae music and I was dancing and I felt that I had found God's love. So that was my start. And it actually stayed with me for 2 weeks. I felt completely detached from all the worries in the world. And I felt so loving. This loving and detached feeling was very uplifting. And then I thought, I don't need to take any course or go anywhere because now I have found it. So I thought I'd reached the goal already.
Wow, gosh, that's an amazing experience. This feeling of love, deep love, and how you translated it into your life. What happened after that 2 week period? You must have connected in at some point?
Yeah, I took the course. I got the message,
Yeah.
invitation to take the course, and that
Mm.
really set me off thinking. I was so amazed by the information I was getting as I was taking the course. And I was thinking, because you asked me to think about things that I thought was important and that wasn't important, and vice versa. And so, what actually, the things, the realizations I had as I was processing the information I was getting, one thing I realized was that I believed in things very strongly that was contradicting themselves, and I hadn't seen it. And I remember having this realization walking over a bridge in Stockholm, and I burst out laughing. How can I believe in reincarnation? Because I used to believe in that very strongly since I was a child. And I also believe in dinosaurs, and I believe in the slow evolution of so many things that sort of contradicting themselves. So I felt spiritual study started to help me sort out what am I believing in and why do I believe in these things? What makes sense to me? What is useful? So it was a process of sorting, and I'm actually still in this process.
Mm. Mm. And refining your beliefs.
Yes.
Mm.
And
Mm.
to step into something that I have recently, because I've been with the BKs for 40 years, and there have been things that has shifted that I thought was important that wasn't important. Like I had one stage early on in my spiritual practice where I tried to be very accurate in everything externally. And actually, it had downsides because I became strict and I became unfriendly. And it was actually, I became strict with myself. And so I became sort of unfriendly with my surrounding as well. And actually hurt some people. And it was this belief I have to be this external figure following all the rules and regulations. And I think that's also programming of, in religious mindedness, you can go external, you put it on the outside, while spirituality is really how do I put these principles on the inside and not to worry about what other people are thinking. It has to come from inside out. And so, what I recently learned while studying trauma, there have been so many programs about trauma and psychology since the COVID times, which I took a lot of joy in exploring. And one very deep insight for myself was the notion of spiritual bypass. That when you start to study spirituality or practice meditation, you can actually go deeper in escapism. While I feel what I learned from spirituality is pragmatism. The practicality of spirituality, I think, is so important. And that's why the figure of Christ or Buddha, all those people who have made an impression, or Gandhi, it's the pragmatism that makes an impression. And I felt I really need to, you know, uh, cultivate in myself, and to also see when am I trying to escape, and you escape into meditation is not the solution. And this is late realizations I had.
Can you just talk a little bit more, um, Lotta, about spiritual bypass and pragmatism or spiritual pragmatism? Um, what's an example of spiritual bypass that you experienced or you thought you might be doing, and and how's that changed? How have you become more spiritually practical?
Yeah, what I feel is that, for me, spiritual bypass is when I don't cannot see my weaknesses, and I keep on just following things externally, but I'm completely blind to certain weaknesses that I have, like living in my head. So for me, I have easy sometimes to explain things very clearly, but then I don't practice that myself,
Mm.
not realizing what the big gap is between what I teach others or what I explain. And I even get satisfaction by explaining things for myself, and not seeing that when my reactions come up, in interpersonal relationship, small things make me upset or make me feel hurt. So then where is this gap of being a peaceful person, being deeply grounded and being detached? And so one of the things that really touched me was this whole idea about ego and humility, because that attracted me from a very long time. I wanted to be like Buddha. I read the book Siddhartha long before I studied with BKs, and I wanted to be a Buddhist. I wanted to be completely egoless. But then egolessness is not the same as suppressing your feelings. And so, in my pursuit to try to be egoless, I suppressed so much of my feelings. And then, when you do that, you are not facing and you are not dealing with them as they need to be dealt with. So, that inner healing process need to happen. And so, for that, I need to face. But I used to think I need to be so hard on myself,
Mm.
and I used to sort of hate my ego, but then to realize that my ego responses is self-defense, because I feel hurt or I feel threatened. And so it's like an inner relationship I need to take care of. I open big topics now, and I have few minutes, so I how to maneuver this is something else.
I mean, I think what you're describing is one of the key lessons of a spiritual journey, isn't it? And I think you've described it beautifully there, Lotta, so succinctly as well. And I imagine you go through a lot of emotional turmoil as you start to unpack that and recognize what's really going on inside. I like what you were saying about that it's an inner journey, not an external. It's not an external process or an external. You could almost use the word facade in a way, although you didn't use that word. But it's very much a spiritual journey, and an authentic one is based on really exploring what's happening deeply inside myself. Yeah. Um, I'm going to push pause there and ask, would you like to do a meditation with us? And maybe you could explore some of these things around how you go into your inner being and stay there, sit there, see what's happening inside, what's happening in your inner landscape, and how you manage that.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. So please relax, find a comfortable position, and pull back into the present moment. Whatever goes on in your life right now, put a pause to that. And kindly become present for yourself. When I meditate, I turn my attention inside. And it's like I create a space for meeting myself. And when I realize that this self is a vulnerable and sensitive being, I turn inside with interest and carefulness and ask myself, how do I feel at this moment? What is my inner state? And I don't try to change anything. I just, with interest and care for myself, I ask, like taking the temperature. And then I go deeper to remind myself that deep inside there is a part of me that's always connected to peace, a safe, compassionate part, like my original self. And I invite that part to step forward. So whatever other feelings is in my life at this time, whatever pressure I'm experiencing, I can listen to that with compassion, with patience and trust. Because I realize there are parts of me that needs healing, that needs to be taken care of, so that they can leave behind beliefs that are not real, like ideas that I'm not worthy, ideas that I'm bad because of certain things I've done in the past. So we carry those beliefs as burdens from the past. But that's not who I really am. It's things that happened, but deep inside there is goodness and light and beauty. So I need to give space for that light and beauty to resurface, so I can realize and melt the burdens from the past and let go. I accept whatever happened in the past, and it becomes part of the past, not pulling my attention now, and instead my original self, the realization of my goodness, of my purity, my original innocence takes space again. Just feel that. And that can be enough for a short meditation.
That was a very beautiful meditation, Lotta. I could feel your many years of meditation experience coming through there, the way you took us so deeply into that original self and allowed us to sit with that self and move away from anything that um, polluted that self, past events, false beliefs, whatever. Mm. Lotta, if you could describe your spiritual journey in one sentence or a metaphor, how would you describe it?
I think the simplest is the butterfly, and that I'm still in the cocoon. It's transformation, and it's sweet work, it's painful work, and it's a beautiful work. And I feel so fortunate to have found this.
Mm. Thank you. We'll come back to some of those, I'm sure, in the Q&A part. Thank you very much, Lotta. I'd like to introduce Linda now, and like Lotta, Linda has also been a daily meditation practitioner and teacher with the Brahma Kumaris for over 4 decades. Unlike Lotta, Linda had a family life, and she brings this wealth of practical experience into her spiritual journey. She worked full-time in a bank until 2004, when she took up early retirement to stay at the Brahma Kumaris headquarters in India, just for a few months. And then when she returned, she started expanding the Brahma Kumaris service in the south of England, where she presently lives, and she coordinates the activities of the Brighton Centre and its surrounds. And one of the many things that I appreciate about Linda is her openness and sharing from her heart and from her own experiences. So, Linda, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about your spiritual journey and the lessons that you've learnt, and things like what first drew you to Raj Yoga, how did you come across, and what was it that attracted you to a spiritual path?
Thank you for the invitation to share. I was 30 years old when I came across the Brahma Kumaris. I had been practicing many different kinds of meditation for about 6 or 7 years before this. We had our city is it's like a mini London, and we have lots of varieties of all sorts of things going on here on all levels. But we had a lot of groups that were coming and bringing their ideas of meditation in the 70s, and so I was attracted towards these things, and lots of things to do with occult things like healing and crystals and sand readings and all these kind of things really interested me much more actually than going to school. I thought if we'd have had this at school, I'd have been top because it was just so appealing to my intellect. But I just went to all of them and I learned lots of things from all of them. And then what I ended up with was astrology was my real passion. I liked astrology for two reasons. One, because the maths was so like you had to be good at maths in those days. Now you do it on a computer, but you had to work out mathematics, and I liked that. I liked doing that. But also it was very head and heart combined, the science of astrology in when I learned it anyway. So I was very attracted towards that. And it also I was questioning loads of things about myself at that time. So the astrology was answering many of those questions. And I found it very supporting and very helpful because I was going through in my relationship a very tricky time and it was kind of the end of the road for that relationship. So it was very supportive in that respect. And so I went to an exhibition that they were holding and the big exhibition unit, and there were many, many different stalls and things there. And I came across the Brahma Kumaris. Like Lotta, I didn't know who they were. I didn't have any idea. I didn't see any signs or anything that said Brahma Kumaris because I would also have sort of, well, it wouldn't have attracted me. I wouldn't have run towards it if I'd have seen it. But I got persuaded to join meditation, very much like Lotta. I thought, I made all sorts of excuses. I couldn't sit on the floor and I couldn't do this and I couldn't do that. I didn't actually want to meditate in this place because it was an exhibition. There must have been over 1,000 people in there and stalls and noise and all the different energies. And I really didn't want to sit for meditation. But anyway, I was talked into it. And I was so glad that they talked me into it because um, opposite where I was sitting, there was a picture on the wall and it was of a circle and it had written in it Golden Age, Silver Age, Copper Age, and Iron Age. That's all I saw. And I thought, I never heard of that before. I've heard of a Stone Age and a Bronze Age but I'd never heard of these ages. Anyway, I didn't take any notice other than it just that seeing that impacted me. And then we sat for meditation and boom, I was gone. I was up in well, I don't know, I was up in the light, but it was beyond the pull of, and I've never been in that light in an aeroplane. It was beyond the height of an aeroplane. And I was just immersed in love, absolute love. And that love went straight into my heart, and then went all through my body. And I was up, I was beyond my body, and I knew at that moment two things. One, this is what I've been looking for, even though I didn't know what I was looking for. And the second was, this was God. This was God. But I didn't know what that meant either. But those two experiences. And then when I came back from the meditation, I don't know what was going on around me, but I felt that it was so powerful and so real. I thought, everybody would come over and say, wow, what was happening to you? That was just really amazing because it was just so real. But I overheard that they had a follow-up program in the city and the following Tuesday, and I went to it. And they were very lucky that I overheard that because I was the only one that turned up. There were other people there, but they were all involved in the PKs, which I didn't know either. And then a few things touched me on that program, but we sat for meditation and that was it. I was gone again, and I had another different kind of experience, but with the same feeling of love. And so I thought that they played a tape, they played a commentary, and I thought it must be that. It must be this commentary. There's some magic in this commentary. So I've got to have one of those. So I bought a commentary, and then I never saw the Brahma Kumaris again after that. I bought this tape. It was half of a pound, 50 pence. in those days, 50 pence. I mean, you can't even buy a glass of water for 50 pence now. But anyway, I bought this tape and I meditated every day for 9 months. Every morning, and I worked out all sorts of routines, and I got it my life quite. And this every day I had an experience every day, all sorts of amazing experiences, and some quite painful and some quite, well, they were all beautiful, even though they were painful. And then there was another exhibition at this place, another spiritual exhibition thing, and I thought I've got to go and see if I can find these people. So I went, and then I met someone. They didn't know who I was, and I told them I'd been meditating with this tape. But on the commentaries, there was lots of information, and I didn't have anything else. So actually, when I did the Raj Yoga course, I knew most of it because I'd heard it on the tape that I was playing. Anyway, so that was my kind of intro, and then after that, it's history, really. So, yeah.
Wow. There's some similarities there with the Lotta in the sense of your first meditation experience was one of complete love. That's a very deep soul matter, isn't it? An experience of deep, deep love. Um, Linda, can you share a defining moment or a challenge that became a turning point in your spiritual growth? Like you were you were in the beginning of it, and you were solo for a period of time, then you reconnected, and now, many, many years later, in many different experiences, can you think of a moment when, or share a moment, if you're comfortable with it, it was perhaps a challenge in some way, but it actually became a turning point in your spiritual growth?
Oh my goodness. I could go on for hours telling you every every other day is a spiritual moment where we grow. And what I wanted to say was that, well, actually from that experience, I came with this slogan of I have to change. This is my mantra, is I have to change. And I feel that that's what started from day one. That as I was having these spiritual experiences, my healing came from these experiences in meditation. And I felt that I didn't, I felt it, but I realized that my heart was broken into thousands of pieces. My spiritual heart, not my physical heart. And that in that 9 months of meditation, where I had no guidance except this tape, that God put my heart back together, and I felt that He had the most finest pair of tweezers, because I felt my heart was glass, and that someone had smashed it on the ground, and I'd been trying to hold it together for this birth, I think maybe many births. But I felt that God just picked each piece of that glass up and put it back in my heart. So that was my healing. And then my heart became more one, in a kind of state of oneness, I felt that sorrow was less impactful in my life. And so I saw that healing had happened, but I realized that actually the healing is good to make your heart strong, but you have to change something within yourself. And so this understanding of the soul was just very crucial for me, and to understand that we have sanskaras, which is your personality, and it's your own self which actually creates the sorrow. And so I kind of worked this out. Of course, I was studying much more on a daily basis. In fact, I was studying every day. But that's the conclusion I came to, that I am causing myself this sorrow, and I have to change. I have to change something within myself. And so this has kind of been my life, that every time I get an experience of sorrow from others, maybe that they are the catalyst, the trigger for that. It's to remind me that that's still inside me and I need to change myself. And so I've looked quite deeply at making these kind of adjustments. And like Lotta, I'm still in the in the chrysalis. I'm still not the butterfly yet, but and 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 I think for myself, I came from a place in the beginning of quite a lot of sorrow that I didn't even notice I had. I've been carrying it for so long, I didn't actually even notice. And I was just plowing things over the top to kind of hide it. But once I had that realization, then I start to learn to let go. And I also started to see that religion had played quite a part in my upbringing of saying that I wasn't good enough and then having to beat the self because you're not good enough. So that is a real turning point, I think, in a spiritual journey to kind of see that that's okay. That's fine. You don't have to do that anymore. And then there's a certain turning point where my focus now is on happiness. That I look at things in my life that don't create dependency but do create happiness. So, it's like I'm moving away from taking happiness from worldly things and much more I'm taking happiness, and the happiness is much more inside. So I feel that that's kind of been my lesson is that's one of the lessons anyway that I have to change. And because it's a mantra, it's of course it's an effort. It's much nicer if everybody else changed. That would be much easier, and I could just do what I want to do. But at the end of the day, if I change and I really change, then those things don't bother me anymore. And this is incredibly liberating. To me, this is the key to freedom. And freedom and happiness are connected.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a very deeply significant moment when and a very empowering moment when you understand when you understood that you're responsible for your sorrow,
Mm.
that
And that
it's in your
was,
head.
yeah, that was on the third lesson of the Raj Yoga course when we did karma. And I was really amazed at the impact that that tiny piece of information gave me, especially in the relationship I was in. I was only responsible for 50% of it, which was like, I just was, whoosh, that was amazing that I wasn't responsible for 100%, which I had carried that for ages. And so 50% was a piece of cake to carry 50%. And I thought that's again, this is a liberating moment when I just felt so light with that just understanding that little point there. Yeah.
Well, it's remarkable, isn't it? I mean, that's really a big learning point when it comes to relationships and human connections for you, wasn't it? That 50% responsibility, not having to take the responsibility for the other. I'd love to back up here a little bit, Linda, before I invite you to do a meditation with us. And I just want to back up to this comment you made about you knew two things from your initial meditation where you were experiencing so much love. And one was that you found what you were looking for, even though you didn't know even though you weren't necessarily looking. I think that's what you said. And the second one was that you knew it was God. Tell us about that.
Well, it was at the time I didn't understand it myself. I just knew it's like my intuition said this is God, and
Right.
this is truth. This is pure. This is real. And I suppose I hadn't in this birth anyway ever experienced anything so profound. It was so real. That experience was so real. it wasn't my imagination at all. I didn't do anything. In fact, I was reluctant to even be sitting there. And yet I was just pulled into this space. And I feel that's when I look back on my journey, I feel, that each one chooses this path without actually knowing what they're doing in the first place. I don't think we any of us know what we're doing. But over a period of time, we're being trained or developed into something that's going to be really useful in the future. And I feel that that experience that I had in the beginning is going to be really significant in the future. When I went into that experience, it was love. That's what my heart felt, but I was in this immense silence, this silence that was, it was huge. It wasn't a tiny space, it was huge. That's what it felt like anyway. This was my initial experience. And then just recently, I was in India in February, and I was due to leave India on the 1st of March. And I was flying through the Arab states. I was flying with Emirates, and I was supposed to fly to Dubai on the 1st of March. And so I just finished my retreat in India, and I was like flying as you do. You've done lots of meditation, and you met lots of lovely elevated people. I was really very joyful at that time. And anyway, my flight didn't go. And when I was told that I wasn't going to fly, I said, "Oh, okay, no problem. I'll go another day. I'll go the day after or something." I had no idea that the situation was a war. And I had no idea. I never, well, at that moment I didn't. And then the next day we were told again that there's a war on and you can't fly. And I still didn't kind of get it. I didn't get what that meant. Anyway, so I was quite like still, okay, somebody will work something out. But as I went through the day, there was no signpost to say what I should do. And I went into this space. There were quite a few of us that were planning to leave on the 1st of March. But I went into this space where I actually did not know what to do. I was waiting for the airline to tell me that this is when you're leaving, or you've got to stay there for a week and then we're going to get things organized. But the airline said nothing. The place I was staying in, nobody had any answers. And our senior teachers didn't offer any answers. So I felt I was in a space where I didn't know what to do. And that was so amazingly unusual because I always know what to do. I always can find an answer. I'm quite flexible. So if that doesn't work, I'll go here, I'll do this. But I was in this space where I didn't know what to do. And so this wasn't the first thought I should have. Anyway, I'm going to practice this, is going to be my first thought. Then I went into meditation. And when I sat for meditation, I sat in meditation asking God, what should I do? And nothing came. Nothing came. But out of that nothing, I got an inspiration that it was that nothingness meant wait and see. So I took that as what nothing meant, because nothing had come. So I waited, and in that day that I was there, waited, I was patient, and then see, it said see. So I observed, and what I saw was that people that were on Air India or British Airways were actually leaving the country, and they were flying home. They weren't coming back from the airport, but I couldn't get out of the airport because none of the airlines were flying. So that was the first thing and then in this space of wait and see, then somebody said to me, there's a sister over here in the office and she helped me, so maybe she can help you. That was the second aha moment. I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't thought of asking somebody that was sort of tucked away in a corner if she could help me. So I went and got help from her and we sorted out. Anyway, I flew back with Air India, but I didn't fly back for another 2 weeks. So where I was stuck, which was in Ahmedabad, they said, "Well, you can't stay here. You have to go back." So I went back to the headquarters for 2 whole weeks. And so the moral of the story is, I mean, that was brilliant for me. I had an extra 2 weeks holiday. This is unplanned. But the moral of the story was this: in the silence, I caught the signals. And I thought, this is actually what my meditation has all been about, is this in the silence that my mind is still, I can catch the right thoughts and then act on them. So I thought the wait and see had come into my mind for me to act on. So I felt that after all these years, I really got to start really trusting this, because this is going to be very useful as we go into the future. Because life is very delicate now. Our planet is very delicate. And so situations can be up and down in a second. So I'll
That,
just stop there.
that's lovely, Linda, to hear that experience and how it related to your original experience of meditation. Um, I think it segues well into a meditation now. If you could take us into that experience of silence so that we can each tap our own inner tuition and see what's there for us.
I'll do my best. So I always like to start with 2 words, which are Om, I am, Shanti, peace. And these 2 words are extremely helpful whenever there's any disturbance externally or internally. To use the words Om Shanti just brings me back to a state of balance, a state of safety. So I like to turn my mind inwards and focus my attention to the center of the forehead and consider myself to be Om, the soul, the light that shines through the eyes. And as I focus my attention on this point of light behind the eyes, automatically I start to feel a sense of peace. Peace is the key to unlock the door to take me inside. Everything always starts with peace. So as I allow that feeling of peace to wash over me, I start to feel a sense of stillness, like looking at the ocean on a very sunny day. There's no wind. There's just the movement of the ocean in its stillness. This is also very calming and soothing. When there's a stillness inside, the mind is still thinking, but the thoughts are moving like the sea. They're moving at their own pace and creating a feeling of stillness. And as I hold on to that experience, or I merge myself into that experience, the mind gradually ceases to generate thoughts. And I go into silence. Silence is the language of the soul. Silence is the language of God. And as I sit in silence, I start to feel God's presence in the form of peace, in the form of love, in the form of bliss. And I, the soul, absorb that peace and love and bliss. And this energizes I, the soul. It emerges feelings of such deep beauty, which is my original and eternal quality. A beautiful being of just light. So I hold myself in that space and just absorb as much as I can of these beautiful feelings. And then, when I'm ready, I come back to my physical body, holding on to that feeling of light and love and peace. Om Shanti.
Thank you for that, Linda. I certainly went on that journey with you. I love the way you stepped us so gently into that silence and allowed us to experience it. And I'd like to ask you the same question I asked Lotta, which is, if you could describe your spiritual journey just in a simple sentence or a metaphor, what would you say?
I would say freedom, inner and outer freedom.
Mm.
Within freedom is all the qualities, the original qualities of the self, which is love, peace, happiness, joy, bliss,
Mm.
all of those, to me, freedom.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that sharing, Linda. I'm wondering what each of you have learnt from the other. You've both listened to what each other has said. Lotta, is there something that you particularly learnt about what Linda was sharing around her spiritual journey and the lessons she's learnt from the spiritual road?
I especially appreciated what Linda was saying about I'm causing my own pain. I think that encapsulates sort of the whole spiritual journey. And it's about, when we can accept that when I can accept that I have to change, it's not a small thing, but just like Linda was saying, there is freedom in that. There is agency in that. And I'm thinking I've often lived in this little box of wanting this one to change. If this one is changing, if that thing is changing, I will be happy. And you will never come out of that box. And so I'm so inspired by what Linda was saying about that.
And Linda, something from you about what Lotta was saying.
Well, I love to listen to everyone's journeys because they are all so unique, and yet underlying, they're all exactly the same. And it feels like, that, special jewels have been plucked out of the out of the drama and just are they're being polished, cut and polished in such a way that they can be used to serve humanity. And what I like about Lotta, because I have attended one of Lotta's programs about what she's doing, and I just think, you know, that's so unique what she's doing, and she's formulated it into such a lovely program that it's so helpful for everyone that attends it. So I really appreciate that her journey has taken her in that direction so she can help to serve others. And each one of us, it's like I just think we get this image sometimes that we are all rough diamonds, and that, you know, when that diamond is being seen and it's taken out of the ground, then it doesn't actually look so beautiful, but it has to be cut and polished. And in order to cut a diamond, you have to have a diamond, which is God. But also how amazingly he cuts, because a diamond, when you cut a diamond, you've got to cut it correctly, otherwise you can do more damage. But each diamond is polished, cut and polished in such a way that it's so inspiring to see another diamond. So I really like what Lotta was saying. I just think it's so real to listen to BK stories. Thank you.
It is, isn't it? And I've been enjoying listening to both of you as well. I'm going to pitch a question to Lotta, and it's relating a little bit to that period where you said that you were so rigid and the need to be so accurate in your spiritual disciplines. And then you shared with us how you moved from an outer journey or a more religious approach to a spiritual approach to your living, and moved inwards. I'd like to ask you, what does your daily meditation practice look like now? I can see how it's probably evolved over time. You've told us about what it was like at one point, but what's it like now, your daily meditation practice?
I feel that, I don't sit in front of a picture. I used to always sit in front of a picture before. It's like I thought the picture was helping me to meditate. And I came to a point when I realized that, the founders of Brahma Kumaris, they were not sitting in front of pictures. And just that is a big difference. And I feel also that I become more having the attitude in relationships and not so fixed on sitting. And so I've been more in movement today than I used to be before. I'm not so fixed on the exact timings, but to have to reconnect when I can and when it's appropriate. So I'm more fluid than I was before. If you talk about exactly the meditation moments, if that is your question.
Uh, yes, I was thinking about. I was kind of thinking of it more generally, but you're right. I did sort of ask it in terms of a meditation practice.
Yes.
I guess maybe I should broaden it to say, what's your approach now compared to what it was then
Oh,
around?
yeah. I mean, it was much more fear-based before.
Um,
I think that's been in my luggage a lot. And when you're fearful, then also and so fearful, it's a lot of fear in my luggage, but I also got responsibility quite quickly. And when you have fear in your luggage and you have responsibilities, you tend to become like this. And I think also because I lived with someone who was very disciplined, very accurate, and that made me more afraid. So I started to look at them and try to follow what they were doing. I wasn't connecting to who am I, what is me, and I think that's such an important thing to do, is to, just like Linda was saying, we're all different diamonds. And when you polish a diamond, you need to understand what is the diamond that you're picking up. How should I polish this to bring out the beauty what is this meant to polish like? If I try to polish it the same as another one, it won't bring out the best of it. And so I think really, for me now, the spiritual practice and what I try to encourage others is to connect that. For me, spirituality is really, or practice is really, to know myself more deeply and to see myself more deeply, because only then can I understand what's my part in this. A situation appears and it's a bit uncomfortable in the relationship with someone. And in the past, it could be, you think negatively about the situation afterwards. But now it's more, okay, what happened here? What is my part in this? Without self-blame. But then what is it I made wrong in this that caused this bad feeling in myself? And how can I take care of that? And so I feel my practice is much more about, and I think it connects to, I wanted to be free from ego for such a long time. I tried to be humble. And, before I came to BKs, I thought to practice humility is to put myself last. Went into a bus. I wanted to be last into the bus. That was a very physical way of understanding humility, which actually is putting yourself down all the time or minimizing yourself. But the consequence of that is the opposite. Because if you suppress your needs, there will be a revolution inside. They will push through because you have certain needs. You have agency is normal. And we should take space. We need to take agency in the right way. And so I feel to understand my needs more properly and to take care of them. It helps me to feed or well, not feed, but cultivate my self-respect. And then I don't need to take extra space, or I don't take it, not dramatical. I make a mistake. I can see it, but I don't blow it up and think, oh, I'm such a bad person. No, it's okay, but remember this next time, don't do this. And then to be my best friend at the same time. Because in a way I'm alone in this. We are all friends in this, but I can't take inspiration from others, but I can't take support really. I have to learn how to support myself and take support from God. That's, yeah.
Thank you, Lotta. I'm going to come back to that one. I'm going to pitch this one to Linda. What's been your biggest learning when it comes to relationships?
My biggest learning. Well, my biggest learning is quite a question. I think that, like I was saying, that I have to change, but what I think is useful in that term is to where you pitch yourself, where you position yourself in this. I need to change, because when relationships are working harmoniously, then yeah, that's one thing. But you don't learn so much about yourself until you come up against a few little obstacles. So I found that this mantra that I have to change, and I don't say this lightly, because I don't actually always like the fact that I have to change, but it's definitely the quickest way around things. But also that way where you're positioning yourself, that's what I was saying, where you position yourself from, and what we learn in the BKs is to always look to have a solution-based positioning. So we're always looking for a solution rather than indulging in the problem or the situation. And then the other thing is that I also like to encourage is to be real, to be authentic, that we're not pretending anymore. And one thing I think about the ego is it actually is quite blind. It can't see what it's doing. So if I'm under the influence of ego, I can't see what's happening. Everyone else can. So I feel that's quite useful in terms of being more real. That when my ego comes up and it's it's wrong, it's in a wrong situation. It shouldn't be used in that situation. Then I don't go into punishment, but I just really realize that everybody can see this, so I don't have to pretend anymore. I don't have to pretend and hide it and then justify it, because I'm working with this attitude of solution. So I'm always looking for a solution. So, okay, the ego came up, that's one thing, but it came up to protect me from something that it doesn't want me to see. But everybody else can see it, so I should actually see it as well. And when I can see it myself, then I can change it. And that's actually, I find that's quite a powerful position, because then I'm not in my victim consciousness that, oh no, I've done it again and I must hide. But no, I've done it again. Okay, Om Shanti, this, let's be real. We haven't conquered all of these things. And then that helps me in this looking for change. What else do I have to change in the sense of relationships? Because relationships, I think in the end of the day, it's where we don't communicate properly. And that's because we're all living with all this nonsense in our in our head most of the time, that we're trying to sort out and get rid of, and it's all gets very complicated. So back into silence. Let me just let the ego actually dies in silence. It can't actually be activated in silence. So come back into silence, look at the situation. As Lotta was saying, what can I do better? So that I don't make that mistake again. And if I do make that mistake again, let me look at it again. Let me see what I can do better. That we can continue to look without all that punishment and you're a sinner and this is very heavy. So then I think, when I'm interacting with our team and we sometimes get a bit spiky, then I just, so it's like that. So it's gone the next second. Don't make a big thing out of it. And I try to do the same with myself, oops, I shouldn't have done that, but I don't make a big thing out of it. And so we're just continually adjusting. And I think that's where we're all at. I think Lotta's at this also, looking and observing and adjusting and it's bringing about, I think, changes in the world as well.
I'd like to ask you something, Lotta. You've spoken about fear and you have too, Linda, but I'd like to pitch this one to Lotta. And we're living in a world where there's so much insecurity, food insecurity, money insecurity, and so I'd like to know, what does inner security mean to you, Lotta, and how is it cultivated?
Well, I feel inner security is both cultivated by practicing, like we have talked about now, about meditation, getting to know myself. But I also think it's also cultivated by my practical, what do I do with my practical surrounding? And I'm thinking, because when you say that the world is living in fear, it's obvious to so many uncertainties. And I was, some people, they get completely trapped in following the news. And then the news is triggering and then it becomes an evil circle. So I feel the principle of simplicity is very useful, to simplify your life, to make less influences of the world that is already triggered to come into your inner world. And so simplifying means for me also to buy less, to own less, to invest in less, and to value who you are and look at what are your real needs. And also to simplify in relationships. Sometimes we feel that we have to be available for people, which is not really, I don't actually have to be available. But it's sort of an habit of sustaining this and this and this relationship. And to have a good look at that from a spiritual viewpoint is very helpful to take myself in an what can you say, to value myself, to come back to myself, because if I want to increase the importance of my life and what I'm doing and look at what is important and what is less important, it's good to look at these things. And if I can simplify my life practically, I also create a more stable foundation for myself. So it's not only, I mean, why I'm saying all of this, because I want to avoid inviting people to escape into the headspace. So I'm not only thinking that I'm a peaceful soul, I'm beyond I don't need to worry about the world around me. Yeah, I'm part of this world. And I have to deal with the world, and I shouldn't avoid that. But how can I simplify the way I live so it's easier for me to be available where it's important to be available? Maybe my closest family members, my closest relationships, where my responsibilities are, but also feel the freedom to cut down. If we look at our availability online, what are we looking at? What are we watching? How many emails am I dealing with? How many WhatsApp messages? It can be quite confusing, and you lose your attention, you spread your attention, and you are not available where I'm not available when I should be available. And so I feel, for me, why I'm talking about this, because I feel this is very important for me to look at this and to work through it. So I'm trying now actually to cut down what I'm doing and cut down how many people I'm engaging with, and to be clear of, do I need to engage in this or do I not need to be engaged in this? Because then I can find my own inner stability also. So I find it's both, it's about understanding myself and to spiritually practice the experience of being soul conscious, being aware of my real self, as Linda was underlining, this reality of who I really am, but also the reality of my responsibilities in the world. Make it more simple. I don't need to be succumbed to the pressure coming from the outside, because there is a lot of pressure coming from the surrounding that I don't need to deal with, and to feel the freedom of liberating myself from that.
Thank you for that. We're close to our closeout time. I want to, get a question in here from both of you. You've both spoken about, your spiritual journey, and very personally, and as an inside journey, distinct from an external show journey. And you've also both touched on responsibilities towards the world that comes from this inner process. I'd like you to both, if you could, just succinctly talk about your relationship with the divine, and that one in terms of moving you forward on your spiritual journey and assisting your transformation.
I personally just feel that to stay, as Lotta was saying, simple, to simplify life, to I have given up the news. I don't listen to anything now at all. And that was a very big thing which I'd put off for years. I feel very much that this relationship is the most important. And for me, the journey is to keep myself not just simple on the outside, but simple on the inside. And to just, because the exposure to all of those, the news and everything, it pulls your thoughts. And somebody, when I was in India, just spoke about one person, about Prince Andrew, and I could not stop my mind, just got so hooked into this one thought. And I thought, that's amazing how complicated it made my life. So I thought, no, I've really got to be very careful and attentive of what I put in my mind. So I put things in my mind that are going to make my mind happy and create very beautiful thoughts. So it was a little bit connected. Okay.
And how does your relationship with the divine help you do this?
Well, because the connection is silence. To me, the connection is silence. And if it's God's mind is silent anyway, and his thoughts are transferred to me in silence. If my mind is still caught up with everything that's happening in the world, then I'm influenced by that, and I can't actually catch the thoughts that are coming to me. And these are gifts. This is a precious time, and I really, really, really value that now.
Yeah, I get you. I understand that. It's connection with the divine and silence and that being your portal to many things actually, one including how you transform. And that's lovely, Linda. Thank you for sharing that. Lotta, what about you? Tell us about your relationship with the divine and in terms of your spiritual transformation.
Hmm. I feel that God is my friend and very alive, and it's because that because the sense of the friendship with God, I can feel God as a living being. Because I felt before I was a BK, and even in the BK world, for a long time, still the image of God was kind of abstract. And I felt that has changed over time. And I feel, a human being or a human soul, we know how to relate to that in a very lively way. And we often think that God is something up beyond the clouds. But I felt really why I'm still here, why I'm still practicing this, is because I feel God's sense of humor, God's love, God's grace, God's light is touching me in different ways. And I feel that's so important for me, that to feel that God is almost, you can say, like a human being, because it's a friendship. And as Linda is saying also, you can catch signals. And also what Linda is saying, it's very important as times gets delicate and you might find yourself in very complicated situations, to be able to catch what is God's inspiration or direction at that time is invaluable. And anyone can develop this connection. And so I would just encourage others to be curious about, can I hear what God is thinking? Can I feel God's heart? Can I feel God's thoughts? When I was new to BKs and I was introduced as God as like a soul with thoughts and feelings, I was curious and I also felt shy. And so I remembered walking over a big plain of grass and I was saying to God, hello. It's like I was a little bit shy because I had very clear feeling, of course, God is there, because I had had the experience of these buckets of love coming. But then I got the introduction afterwards, how that source of that feelings looked like and felt like, and that actually I could have a connection, just like, radio is connecting to a source. And so to think about what that means, to explore that, I would like others to explore that too, that it's actually our own parent, the spiritual parent of all of us. And we can all reconnect to that parent and to feel that feelings, just the same kind of connection you can have with a human being. It's just that this one is completely pure and innocent, and only have good feelings for you. No judgment, no negative feelings, no remembering past mistakes. And so that's why it's so attractive to be in that connection.
Wow, we've covered a lot of terrain and so much blessing to both of you for sharing so personally. about your spiritual journeys and the lessons that you've learned on the spiritual road. I feel like we've just begun the conversation. There's so much wisdom within both of you that we could easily do this episode again, and you would be introducing us to new learnings and so on. So from our hearts, I say thank you to both of you for sharing about your journey over the last 4 decades, the kinds of things that you've learned on the spiritual road. It's been really a very enriching conversation. So thank you for joining us on Youniverse.
Thank you so much for having us.
Likewise.
And viewers, we've been listening to Lotta Albin from Sweden and Linda Lee from the south coast of the UK. Both are daily meditation practitioners and teachers of the Brahma Kumaris. And they've been sharing their insights, the things that they've gained and the lessons they've learned on the spiritual road. So if you'd like to subscribe to Open Your Eyes to the Universe to receive monthly updates, please email us at special.events@au.brahmakumaris.org. And if you live, if you work, or you study, or visit or play this in Sydney CBD, then visit us at I Meditate at 180 George Street. We're open every Thursday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. If you'd like a bit of quiet time, if you'd like to explore your inner world and take up some of the ideas that Linda and Lotta have been presenting to us or sharing with us tonight, then come on in for some quiet, reflective time, some guided meditations, or to listen to a weekly talk on personal empowerment. We have Gillian Sawyers with us at I Meditate in May, and she's going to be talking on how to get along with anyone. So be sure to check that one out. Our next episode of Open Your Eyes to the Universe is in May, and as we close out tonight, we'll play a special song by Peter Clark called Beautiful Traveller. So until we see you again next month, take care, walk lightly on the earth, and Om Shanti.